Even after reading the Scrum Guide and attending a class, it may still be unclear how to actually run a sprint. Sometimes, even teams that have been running Scrum for a while wonder whether they're doing it right. Watch this video to find out how to set up your sprints and to start running them the right way. Hey, it's Daria here. Welcome. Let's build some awesome teams. Now, I know you might be wondering what's with the background, what's with the sound and lighting. Well, I am not actually in my home studio. I am filming it from a different location, and I'm going to be filming the videos during the month of November in this new location. I'm going to try to set it up as much as possible to avoid any echo, to avoid weird audio and the lighting, but it's not going to be the same, I think. Well, I still wanted to create more content for you to make sure that you get some of those nuggets of wisdom every week as usual. So let's jump back into the video. In this video, I'd like to talk practice, the actual how-to of the sprints in Scrum. You might just be starting out as a Scrum team, or maybe you are a new Scrum Master, or maybe you're already running sprints and want to check in with yourself of whether you're doing it. So let me walk you through some key elements and some of my personal secrets of sprinting. Just to be sure, we're not talking about running, but about product development. As an FYI, in this video I'll share some points of sprints that I also cover in the Scrum Master Startup Guide. Though in the guide, I go into much more detail and give you some extra tips and even templates you can follow. If you are looking for even more guidance, then check it out. Okay, let's get started. First things first, we need to understand what the basic structure of a sprint looks like. While the Scrum Guide doesn't tell us how and when exactly to have various events, there are a few things we know for sure, the rules of Scrum. And here they are. First, sprint planning is the first event to happen in the sprint. It must take maximum 8 hours for a 1-month sprint, and for shorter sprints, it is usually shorter. Then, daily Scrum must happen every working day of the sprint and must take no more than 15 minutes, regardless of how big your team is or how long your sprint is. Sprint review is the second to last event in the sprint and happens at the end. It must take a maximum of 4 hours for a 1-month sprint, and for shorter sprints, it's usually shorter. And then the sprint retrospective is the last event in the sprint. It usually takes a maximum of 3 hours for a 1-month sprint, and for shorter sprints, it is usually shorter. And of course, the sprint itself can be maximum 1 month long. That gives you a general idea of what the structure looks like. With that in mind, what would be an example of a sprint schedule for a team? So you know that on the first day of the sprint, you'd want to run the planning event, and on the last day, you'd have both the review and the retrospective. Let's imagine a team that runs a 2-week sprint. This is by far the most popular sprint length these days for many different types of teams in many different organizations. It's just, I guess, a popular way to start off with a 2-week sprint. Say your team wants to start their sprint on a Monday, so it means that it will end on a Friday 2 weeks later. It means that on the first Monday of the sprint, at the sprint start, you'll run your sprint planning. Since without a proper plan, your team can't really start working, it's best to have the planning as the first meeting of the day. It will most likely be happening in the morning, say at 9 a.m. For starters, you can book a longer time box, maybe between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. for the sprint planning. As your team becomes more accustomed to the planning and the backlog refinement overall, you may need less time. But it's best to set enough time for the meeting at the start to not rush through it. Without proper planning, your team will not be able to get started and will only lose more time trying to figure things out at the beginning of the sprint. Watch my video Scrum Master role in sprint planning to understand how to facilitate the discussion to keep the meeting productive. and to the point so that you don't waste time there. With the sprint planning done, the work in the sprint starts. The developers pick up the tasks from the sprint backlog. The product owner works on the product backlog planning for the future and forecasting. The Scrum Master coaches the team and helps remove impediments. The next mandatory event is the daily Scrum. Every working day, the developers would meet to discuss their progress towards the sprint goal and create a plan for the next 24 hours. The Scrum Master and the product owner are not mandatory attendees. Only developers are. It's really a meeting for them. Since the team is planning for the rest of the day, it's best to have the daily to be the first thing of the day. So it will be a morning meeting, most likely, say from 9:30 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. It's the same time every single day because it will allow you to reduce complexity and the need for additional coordination every day. Watch my video Scrum Master role in Daily Scrum to help your team get the most out of the 15 minutes every day, not to waste any time and not to prolong this meeting unnecessarily. Daily Scrum is very short and to the point. The team might need some more time to discuss certain topics in detail right afterwards. Say two developers need to discuss how to fix a certain issue, so they meet after the daily. It might be a good idea to keep open time for the meeting after the daily meeting, as in don't book anything else after the daily Scrum, right after the daily Scrum, because it might interfere with those important discussions that need to happen. So we have our sprint planning, we got that, we are doing our daily Scrum every single day, and the sprint keeps running for the next 9 days until the final day, which will be the Friday on the second week. So the next Friday will mark the last day of the sprint, and it will be the time for the sprint review and the sprint retrospective. Sprint review will be the second to last meeting of the sprint end, so we need to find the right time for it. Once the sprint comes to an end, the team won't have much to do apart from getting ready for the next sprint. It's best to have the review towards the end of the day. A good time would be after lunch. Say your team decides to do it between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. on the end of sprint Fridays. That 2-hour time box gives plenty of time to show what was done during the sprint, get feedback from stakeholders, discuss the product backlog, and create some forecasts for future sprints. This also leaves the team some time in the morning to complete last tasks and get ready for the meeting, though I would not recommend keeping the last minute tasks and tests or QA, something like that, to the very last day, because it will be complicated to actually do everything and then be ready for your sprint review. And the last meeting to happen in the sprint is the sprint retrospective. It is right towards the end of the day, after all other work and meetings have been completed, so it gives the teams an opportunity to review every aspect of the past sprint. Say you put it between 3:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. on the end of sprint Fridays, right after the sprint review. It still gives you some time between the meetings so that the team can go take a break and then come back. But it also covers a big chunk of time at the end of the day, so your team won't be able to really work on anything during that time. The sprint ends, and this will conclude your sprint. The next sprint starts immediately. Though since it's a Friday, the team can take a well-deserved break and enjoy their weekend. Next Monday, the new sprint starts with the sprint planning at 9 a.m., same as the sprint before, and the cycle continues. How long should the meetings be? As I mentioned at the beginning, each event has a time box, a maximum amount of time it should run for as per the Scrum Guide. Is there a recommended length for each event based on the sprint length then? Well, actually, there isn't. The only thing that the Scrum Guide tells us is what the time box is for the 1-month sprint. Many teams think that the time box can be split into weeks and then adjusted to the sprint length they have. As in, sprint planning for 1 month sprint is 8 hours maximum, so for a 2-week sprint, it's 4 hours maximum. Well, the Scrum Guide doesn't do that math. It will be up to your team to decide how long each event will be, as long as it's not longer than the maximum time box of 8 hours for sprint planning, 4 hours for sprint review, and 3 hours for sprint retrospective. Now, I know that your team will most likely want to get out of the meeting ASAP, any meeting really. But it's really not about the length of the meeting, but about its purpose. If you are doing a great job coaching the team and facilitating the discussion, you will be able to get a lot of value out of every minute of the meeting. Set a longer time box in your team's calendar and end the meeting as soon as you got to the point of it. For example, during the sprint planning, you are creating your sprint goal, your sprint backlog, and a plan to get a done increment at the end of the sprint. Once you got it all figured out, great, it's time to finish the meeting and start the work. Everything that I have given you in this video, of course, is just a very quick overview of how you can start running your first sprint. There are a few videos on my channel that I mentioned that can help you organize your team and make your discussions more productive. However, if you want more guidance, my personal tips and secrets, actual step-by-step instructions on how to run a sprint, how to prepare for the meetings, and how to facilitate them, I encourage you to check out my Scrum Master Startup Guide. And with that, we are at the end of the video. A quick recap of the example schedule that I have given you. A 2-week sprint that starts on a Monday and ends on a Friday. On the first Monday of the sprint, the team meets at 9 a.m. for the sprint planning. Then, every working day of the sprint, the developers meet for the daily scrum at 9:30 a.m. On the last Friday of the sprint, the team meets with stakeholders in the sprint review at 1 p.m. And lastly, on the same Friday, they meet for a sprint retrospective at 3:30 p.m. You can also find another example of the schedule I created in my Confluence video where I showed how to create a team wiki. So that might be helpful for you as well. And that is it for this video. I hope you learned something new. And if you did, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content like this, and leave a comment down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers and Scrum on!